Hello, welcome. Notions on the Christian Life. My name is Dave Pinson, also known as Philippine Bible Ministries missionary per se in the Philippines. So today I want to talk about. I'm so blessed. Once a month, usually, first Sunday of the month, I they allow me to preach down here at this little Assembly of God church in the village of Kamaya, down on the beach, right next to where we're building our house of prayer. That's another story. Someday I'll tell you how that happened if I haven't told you already. But today I'm thinking about doing a sermon on Isaiah 58. So I want to open that up. See if I can do this. I can open that up, and if you can still see me, and I can start reading the scripture. So let's try it. So Isaiah 58. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice, show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sins. So I don't know if you know this, but the times of the prophets, the people were blowing it all the time. They were like serving other gods. They were putting their children on fires of Molech. They were doing all kinds of evil stuff in the field with all kinds of people without their clothes on. They were doing all kinds of weird stuff in the name of the pagan gods. But then it says, "Yet they seek me daily and delight to know my ways as a nation that did righteousness and forsook not the ordinance." So there was a time when the history of Israel, the history of the two tribes that became two kingdoms, Judah and Israel, and once they were together, is that they would do that. They would serve God and then they would go away. And he says, "Well, there was a time when they served me, and now they don't, and yet they still come to me." They would go to the temple and they would do the godly things that they're supposed to do. Then they would go to the pagans and do the ungodly things that they weren't supposed to do. Then they would go back. But so this is a heart issue. And they say, "We fasted, but we don't see you." It says, "We have fasted," say they, "and thou seest not." So in other words, you don't see us. We have afflicted our souls, in fasting. And he says, "Is this the day that I've chosen?" Verse 5. "A day for man to afflict his soul? Is it not to bow down their head as a bulrush?" In other words, and he says, "To spread sackcloth and ashes." So he goes, bow your head as if as a weed does when it's getting ready to bow down and afflict yourself. So Jesus said that when you fast, don't be like the Pharisees. Don't go around, you got faces all dirty, you got ash on your head, like, "Oh, that guy, he's so religious. He must be fasting and giving up great things for God because he's such a holy man." He just said, "No, don't do that. Wash your face, look normal, and just go out and do it for the Lord." And I must admit that sometimes when I have fasted in the past, I've sort of complained about it. "Oh, I'm fasting. It's so hard." But this is not what he's talking about. You're going to see what he's talking about in a minute. He's talking about a different kind of fast. He's talking about your heart, your spirit, your heart, and your soul. And he says, because he says in verses, he's talking about the acceptable fast. So he says, "You're calling this an acceptable fast? Your heart's far from me. Is what he's saying. Your heart is not right." And he goes, "Is this not the fast I've chosen, to loose the bonds of the wicked, to undo the heavy burdens, and let the oppressed go free, and to break every yoke?" So what's he talking about? He's talking about doing good. He's talking about, is this not the fast I've chosen? To loose the bonds of the wicked, to undo the heavy burdens. In other words, Jesus said, "I will build my church. The gates of hell shall not prevail. I've come to this world to destroy the works of the enemy." Well, what's the works of the enemy? The bands of wickedness, the heavy burdens, the oppressed. Who oppresses them? The devil does. Break the yokes. It says in Romans that we were once, I think it's Romans, we were once under the yoke of slaves to sin. I break the yoke of that, and I give you a new yoke. I give my yoke is easy, yoke of righteousness, and now you're a slave to righteousness, brother. Yeah, that's a real thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not legalistic to want to walk in righteousness. That just means you love God, right? So he says this, and so this also makes you think of this. Fasting means to give stuff up, right? So you're giving stuff up, but you're not giving up food here. What are you giving up? You're giving up of your time and your life and your treasure. You're giving up of your time, and so this is a fast I've chosen. You know, uh, we met a couple here not too long ago. They're missionaries here, but back at home they have outreach ministry, right? They go into prisons. What do? They loose the bonds of the wicked. They undo heavy burdens. They break the yoke of the oppressor. They go in. They fellowship with these guys. They have Bible studies. They have they send them letters of encouragement, and they basically adopt them, right? And when they get out, they have a home where they can go through a program and maybe get a job, get back on their feet, become disciples of Christ, right? Um, Go out and help other people, and spread the discipleship. Anyway, these people have amazing ministries. They also feed people. They also go into elderly homes, and so these people are doing it. What are they doing? They're breaking the bonds. What are they doing? They're giving of themselves, right? Um, and it says, "Is not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and thou bring the poor that are cast out to thy house." So there's a guy, Keith Green. So Keith Green, old back in the day, back in the 90s, I guess the 80s, 90s. They had this song, "Oh Lord, you're beautiful. Your face is all I see." Anyway, beautiful song. Yeah, he was a musician. He had a crazy heart for God. They would bring people into their homes all the time, people off the streets, and they were discipling them. Lonnie Frisbee did the same thing. What are they doing? They're bringing in the oppressed, and they're making them disciples of Jesus, right? And the poor, when they're cast out, when they see naked, they cover him. So it's raining hard. You give somebody your coat. You have a heart, is what it's about. It's about your heart, really. Do you have a heart for these people? Do you want to help people? Do you give of yourself? Do you give of your life? That's what he's talking about. That's the acceptable fast. Like, you could say, well, we were gonna go on a trip to Israel, but instead we decided to go help people. We decided to go down to Mexico to this place we know, and we decided to give of our lives to these orphans down there. We're bringing them clothes. We're giving them of the money we were going to spend on their vacation. We're spending it on them. What are we doing? The acceptable fast of the Lord, right? Jesus said, "Pick up your cross, deny yourself." And so that could be this. It doesn't have to be like suffering some other way. I mean, it could just be, the fast of the Lord, giving up of yourself, giving up of your time. Um, and then it says, then shall they break forth as the morning, and thy health shall spring forth, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be your reward. So he goes, after you do these things, right? Jesus called us to do acceptable things, right? He says, he called us to the good works that were prepared before you, right? So after you do these things, then there's a release. God releases the blessing, right? This is not legalism. You said, "Oh, well, I don't have to do it." No, you don't have to do anything. You do not have to do anything. But where's your heart, man? Where's your heart? Does your heart like want to do these things? Don't you have a thing that just says, "Man, wouldn't it be awesome if I could just take a year or take a month or whatever and go serve people?" And isn't that what God created us for, right? And he goes, so then you will be a blessing. And then he says, your light will break forth. This little light of mine, you don't hide it under a basket. Bring it out and let it shine, brother. Your light's not shining because you have a bumper sticker on your car because you go to church and sing a praise song. That's not you're not shining your light anywhere there, right? And then he says, then you shall call and the Lord shall answer. You shall cry and he shall say, here I am. Here I am. So it reminds me of Samuel when Samuel's a little kid, and the Lord's calling him, and he thinks, not yeah, Samuel, and he thinks that it's, what's the guy's name, Eli, and he's like, Eli, yeah. He goes, no, it's God. So he goes, here I am, here I am. He says, and then here's God saying, here I am. So yeah, he's like, so where's God? It's like, I'm gonna go to Israel. The Holy Land. Well, you know what? The Holy Land is inside of you. The Holy Land dwells in us, man. So here I am. He says, here I am. So I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to go to church. I don't have to do all these things to have contact with God. Just the acceptable fast of the Lord. What do you do? Pick up whoever wants to follow me, pick up your cross. That's the acceptable fast of the Lord. Do you want to follow him or do you want to just follow yourself? Because you can just follow yourself. You don't have to follow him. And then he says, if you draw out thy soul to the hungry, in other words, if your heart, your soul, your spirit goes out to the hungry and satisfies the afflicted, then they shall rise, thy light shall rise in obscurity, and your darkness will be as the moon, as the noonday. So he goes, if your soul is for the hungry, and your heart is to satisfy those that are afflicted, those that are stuck in addictions, those that are stuck in alcoholism, those that are stuck in sin. Now, There's some people today that just want to stay in that sin. They want to call themselves a sinning Christian. I'm an alcoholic Christian. I'm a this, that, the other. No, no. He came to break those bonds, brothers and sisters, to break those bonds, to give the afflicted soul that light, right? That light. And he says, and then you'll have this joy in you that will light up the darkness around you. And then it says, and the Lord will guide you all the time, continually, and will satisfy your soul, even though all around you is in a horrible place. The world can fall apart at any minute. I don't know about last days, and it's going to be, but it probably could. It looks like it is falling apart, right? And if the world falls apart, you still have Jesus, right, to satisfy your heart and your soul, right, and to make fat thy bones. In other words, he's saying that you'll be full of God. You'll be full. That's an old saying, right? And then you should be like a watering garden, like a spring of water. In other words, Jesus said in the book of John, that those who love God, those who follow him, will be like a fountain who springs water up out of them, right? Why? Because the Holy Spirit is indwelling you, right? And you're spilling out this water, this love, really. So Jesus said to love God, love others, love people. You can't hide that. You're loving people, and there's no law against goodness and love. And so people around you will be affected. They say, "What's up with this guy? Why is he always so kind? Why is he doing these things?" Well, there's only one way, because the acceptable fast, because he's following Jesus, because he's willing to give his life for others, because he is doing this, and he's doing it in a way that fills him. It's like the lady at the well, right? The lady at the well would drink of water. Jesus says, "We would drink this water, you'll never thirst again." Aha. And then they went to get him food and said, "Where's your food?" He goes, "I'm fine. I got food you don't know about." "What's your food?" "To do the Father's will." So there we're back to that again. So what is the acceptable fast of the Lord? Pick up your cross and follow him. What does that look like? Well, it could look like this: giving your life for others. And they shall build the old waste places. They shall rise up the foundations of many generations, the restorer of the past to dwell in. So, so Jesus says that you will be like that seems like a good place to end this, right? It says you'll be like a fountain. You'll be able to touch the world. Why? Because you've given of your life, right? You've given of. That's why we're in the Philippines. I don't know, if hopefully we're blessing people, but that's my heart. My heart is to give it away. And if we run into stuff and we're in a drought and we feel like that we don't know where God is, well, God's right here. He showed me this. I'm right here, brother. Don't worry about it, my son. you know Anyway, so that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the acceptable fast of the Lord, which basically means give your heart to Jesus Christ, right? And then see what he does with it. And then he's going to give you a heart for the afflicted. For the million people, there's probably at least 1 million people going to hell each week. Does that ever break you? Do you ever break a sweat about that? Do you think Jesus doesn't weep about that? Do you think Jesus doesn't say, "Who will go? Who will go? Who will touch these people?" Right? You see the person in the street. Who will go? You see your neighbor is a drug addict or alcoholic, or there's horrible people are in horrible places right now in their hearts and their souls. Well, who will help them? Right? Will you help them? Will you? I mean, that's the acceptable fast of the Lord, right? Deny yourself, right? Like this, huh? Maybe give up one vacation. So, we're going to have a vacation. So let's just give it up and see if we can find a creative way to serve other people, right? And I'm not talking about just going into some country with a guitar and having some tracks out. I mean, I guess that's fine. But at the end of the day, living with people and caring for people, or just showing them how much you love them, right? So that's what it is, brothers and sisters. God bless you guys. The acceptable fast of the Lord. Deny yourself and love others and love God and make disciples of the world. And then he says, "Here I am." Wait, I don't have to go, or I don't have to go to church, or I don't have to. No, here I am, right here, right here. God bless you guys. Ta ta for now.